I'd argue that the Queen Mary 2 is the most special and unique ship that you can travel on today. The ship entered service in 2004 and was the first true transatlantic liner built in a generation. She replaced the iconic and famous QE2 on the North Atlantic Passage, and today is the only actual ocean liner in service. But I'm not here to talk to you about her ocean liner credentials that you can find in plenty of other videos on my channel. Today I'm going to talk to you about the 10 things that make Queen Mary 2 absolutely unique and special, and why you should travel on board the ship as soon as possible. Number 10, the sheer size and grandeur of the ship. Queen Mary 2 was designed to be an iconic ocean liner. She's in fact the largest ocean liner that's ever been built, and when she entered service in 2004, she was the longest, tallest, widest, and most expensive passenger ship ever built. She was bigger than all the cruise ships at the time, and though while she has been eclipsed by cruise ships in terms of size, she's still the world's largest ocean liner to ever enter service. Some of the things designed into Queen Mary 2 really make the size and scale and grandeur of the ship stand out. For example, there are 2 double-height decks on Deck 2 and Deck 3, with these magnificent long hallways that link the B stairway all the way down to the Britannia restaurant, the ship's main restaurant. These 2 walkways on both decks have beautiful wide halls that remind you of the ocean liners of days gone by. And part of the decoration here are panels that depict the different continents around the world. And one of the most famous parts of the ship is actually on the North American panel, where if you look closely you can find Homer Simpson. Queen Mary 2's main hallways and corridors are also much larger than what you'll find on a modern day cruise ship. For example, there are no indentations and cabins jutting into the hallways, so if you stand at the aft end of one of the passenger decks, let's say Deck 4, you can look all the way down the ship and see right the way down to the bow. That's a pretty long way. In fact, it's over 1,000 feet in length, so it's pretty impressive when you're on board the ship. The corridors are wide, the elevator lobbies are wide, the ship has a great sense of space, and it just makes you feel like there's more space for you. And one of the other things that's really interesting about the ship is she has a relatively high space per passenger ratio, meaning that there's more space for each individual passenger than what you'll find on many of the cruise ships in the world, particularly ships of a similar size. Number 9, the ship's grand lobby. And look, most passenger ships, most cruise ships have an atrium and a grand lobby entrance area. So what's so special about Queen Mary 2's? Well, it plays on the previous theme in that it's a very large and oversized space. Whilst it only reaches up 5 decks, the actual lobby area itself is both a functional area and a decorative area. It's a 2-level space which links Deck 2 and Deck 3 thanks to a curved staircase. Now, when the ship first came into service, there were actually glass elevators here, but these were removed in 2016, which has actually opened the area up a lot more, which allows it to be used a bit more throughout the voyage. The upper area links into the Mayfair shops and also the champagne bar. So you have a bit of a hub there where people can come in for a drink or go and do some shopping, walk down the main staircase, and then you have access to the purser's office and entry to the casino. This area also then links into those giant hallways that I spoke about before that lets you promenade down throughout the ship towards the Britannia restaurant. On the port and starboard side you can access the different bars and lounges. And this really does sort of act as a bit of a callback to the old ocean liners of days gone by, when the first class passengers would enter into these grand hallways and these grand embarkation lounges to board the ship. Queen Mary 2's, on the other hand, not only is it grand in terms of its size, you look up at the top of the ship and you can see a huge bas relief of the Queen Mary 2 and a rising sun, so it's very well decorated, but it's also a functional space as well. Number 8, the Canyon Ranch Spa Club on board the ship. And yes, of course, now it's run by Mareel, but it was designed by Canyon Ranch. This is a massive complex on Deck 7 of the ship, and it's quite unique and special. And the big key point here is that it was designed by a world-class spa operator, which is really, really interesting because it makes the Queen Mary 2 spa offering stand out amongst all the other ships that I've been on at least. Queen Mary 2's spa complex not only contains the usual treatment rooms and therapy rooms that you might expect, but it has a huge and very impressive hydrotherapy pool. This is like nothing I've ever seen on a cruise ship before, and it makes Queen Mary 2 as an ocean liner stand out with this amazing complex. The hydrotherapy pool is huge, and there's various different treatment offerings within the pool area, from jets that blast down and relax the muscles on your back to beautiful areas where you can just lay and enjoy the bubbles. It's a massive space and it allows you to have a really relaxing time. Number 7 is the chart room bar on board the ship, and this is a remarkable space because it was actually the second chart room bar to ever be put on board a Cunard ship. The name's origin comes from the QE2, which actually took its name from the chart room on board the ship's bridge, the place where they used to manage the paper charts when they were traveling the QE2 from port to port. And the chart room bar on board both QE2 and now of course Queen Mary 2 has a nautical theme with ocean charts on the walls in glass. Queen Mary 2's chart room is a huge space. It's got double height ceilings because it's located on deck 3, so it has that very high head height which allows it to feel grand and oversized, but you don't feel lost in it because they've put very large, comfortable, cozy furniture in there which makes it feel like a warm and inviting place. There's a circular bar towards the aft end of the room, and here you can sit on chairs and talk to the bartenders and get to know them. They get to know you and what kind of drinks you like, and it becomes a friendly atmosphere. There's a small stage for a band or musicians to play. Sometimes they even do karaoke in here, though usually it's in the pub. And the chart room has this sort of warm and engaging atmosphere, a great place to meet for drinks, a great place to meet after dinner or before dinner. They even do hot canapes here. It's a lovely space with a nautical theme and huge windows that look out over the ocean, so you just get a beautiful view surrounded by nautical charts and with great service. It's one of the best spots on board the ship. Number 6 has to be the Queen's Room on board the ship, and this is Queen Mary 2's ballroom. Now, Queen Mary 2's ballroom is the largest ballroom at sea, and it actually has the largest dance floor to ever go to sea. Queen Mary 2 has a remarkable full-sized ballroom from port to starboard, located just aft of the main Britannia restaurant. This space can be a little bit difficult to find sometimes because you do have to take the very hidden deck 3L to get there. So you hear a lot of people saying, I don't know where the ballroom is, but once you found it, you'll never forget how to get there. It's actually quite easy once you know how. But the point is that the ballroom is this amazing space that's actually a huge amount of space on board the ship dedicated to what is essentially a non-revenue raising part of the vessel. Because here you can access afternoon tea free of charge during the cruise every afternoon, where you get white glove service and there's a harpist playing on the dance floor, beautiful sandwiches, cakes, and of course scones, which makes it really, really special. And then in the evenings there's ballroom dancing, and the Queen Mary 2 even has its own orchestra, the Queen's Room Orchestra, which plays here each night and allows anyone who wants to dance on the dance floor. Now, if you love dancing and you're traveling by yourself, there are dance hosts available on board who will dance with you, and you can dance the night away. Afterwards you can head even further aft into the ship's nightclub, but the Queen's Room ballroom really is a stunning space, and it just looks spectacular when you walk in there. Number 5 is actually a strange one for an ocean liner, and it's one of the ship's swimming pool facilities. Queen Mary 2 has a swimming pool under a glass roof located just forward of the funnel on deck 12. And this is a very special space because it's covered and sheltered, meaning you can use it all year round. And it's also one of those spaces that isn't overly used. Because it's at the top of the ship, you can often find yourself a nice spot to sit on the deck chairs and enjoy this relatively large pool facility. There are 2 whirlpools and a large swimming pool located under the glass roof, and when the roof opens up on rare occasions, I have actually seen it once, you get a beautiful view up towards the ship's funnel, but it can be closed and kept warm year round, meaning it can be used in the middle of the Atlantic, which is different from the other 2 swimming pools that are out on the open decks. This area also has its own bar, so you can enjoy a drink, you can sit in the jacuzzi and have a cocktail, just enjoy yourself on board the ship and experience the luxury of traveling on board a modern-day ocean liner. This video is brought to you by me and my new book, The Evolution of the Passenger Ship. In The Evolution of the Passenger Ship, we've brought years of research together to create a book that takes you on a journey from the earliest sailing ships right the way through to the modern behemoths that we see today. The Evolution of the Passenger Ship is available at all good bookshops, and if you buy a copy, you help us by supporting the channel. Thanks so much, and now back to the video. Number 4 is the amount of heritage that you'll find throughout the ship. The first one I want to point out is the Boston Cup, and this is a 2.5 foot tall solid silver cup that's located in the grand lobby on board the ship. Now, this cup was actually created in 1840 by a master craftsman in Boston to signify the arrival of RMS Britannia at the end of her maiden voyage 185 years ago. But it was actually lost after it was initially presented to Samuel Cunard on board Britannia. The cup itself wasn't quite finished, so the craftsman took it back, and then we don't really know what happened to it for decades, until in the 1960s, the then chairman of the Cunard line found the cup whilst antiquing in an antique shop in Maryland. And this is remarkable because he saw the cup, he read the inscription, he knew what it was, he purchased it and brought it back to the United Kingdom. It was handed over to Queen Mary 2 when she became the flagship of the Cunard line, and it's been travelling with the ship ever since. In addition to the Boston Cup, you can also find heritage all over the ship. There's a wonderful thing called the Maritime Quest, which allows you to go on a walking tour of the ship and learn all about Cunard's history and heritage. And it's an absolutely beautiful experience to walk throughout the ship and see all of these magnificent panels that talk about the Cunard heritage dating all the way back to 1840. The other thing that's really nice about the ship is that you will find paintings throughout the vessel, giving the ship an absolutely spectacular nautical feel. Number 3 for me is the Ship of State dining room, the Britannia dining room. Now this is a really interesting space on board the ship because it's a 3-story tall main dining room that rivals the best Ship of State dining rooms that you would have found on any of the world's flagships back in the era of the ocean liner. When passenger ships were built back in the era where ocean liners ruled the waves, they were symbols of their nation's might and prowess. So you had all sorts of design and beautiful interior elements built into these ships to showcase the nations which had built them. And one of the spaces that you'd find this showcased the most was on the first class dining rooms. These dining rooms were considered to be Ship of State dining rooms. They were wonderful places where the best of that country, the best of Britain, the best of France, the best of Germany would be on display. Queen Mary II has her own version of this. The main dining room, however, on ships of old was mainly reserved for first class passengers. Second and third class had their own dining rooms, whereas on Queen Mary II, this magnificent space is available for all passengers to enjoy. This means that no matter what cabin category you have, from the smallest inside cabin to the largest suite, you can dine for free as part of your cruise in the Britannia restaurant. Now, if you're in the high suites on board the ship, you will get access to the grills restaurants on board, which are very nice but don't have the same grandeur in terms of their internal design as the Britannia dining room, but you can choose to come and eat here if you wish to. Now, the Britannia dining room is a 3-story venue and has a 2 sort of level setup accessible from deck 2 and deck 3, but it also bypasses deck 3L, which allows passengers to walk from the forward end of the ship through the dining room without interrupting diners and then exit out the aft towards the Queen's room. This means that this space is actually much bigger than it looks like on the deck plans and has this magnificent tapestry on the aft wall that depicts a bit of a blend between Queen Mary and Queen Mary II, set against the New York skyscrapers and bridges. So it's a wonderful space that has this real ambience, this real atmosphere that is not really recreated anywhere else. And although the other Cunard ships do have a Britannia restaurant, nothing quite compares to the Britannia restaurant on Queen Mary II. Number 2 for me is the ship's Planetarium, Illuminations, and this is a remarkable space. It was the first planetarium to ever go to sea, and it's still the largest planetarium to ever be put on a passenger ship. Now, the planetarium on board is a mixed-use venue because not only is it a planetarium, but it also shows 3D movies, normal cinema movies, and also is the venue for lectures. So this is where I perform when I do my maritime history speeches on board the Queen Mary II. Illuminations is another area that is not a revenue generating space on board the ship, but it takes up a lot of space. Access to the planetarium is free. Access to the movies are free. Access to the lecturers are free. So it comes as part of your cruise. And this is wonderful. It's one of the things that makes the Cunard experience so special, particularly on board this ship, is that once you've bought the ticket to go on board the ship, you have access to these wonderful experiences without this extra cover charge that they're putting on so many other cruise ships out there. Now, the planetarium on board has the central dome that lowers over the front seats. If you sit in one of the red seats, they recline and allow you to have a view of the planetarium dome, and you can go on a wonderful journey through space and time thanks to the planetarium shows that they showcase in this space. As I mentioned, it's also a cinema, but my favourite use for this area is the lecture venue. It's a wonderful lecture venue with great sight lines. There's no obstructions, no pillars blocking the way, which is pretty remarkable from an engineering point of view, given it's right towards the bow of the ship. And it's also a fantastic space for the lecturer because I get an excellent view of the audience from that stage. You just get to see all the faces, you can see people are enjoying what you're talking about, and the crowd and the audience really goes with you. So I really love it here, and it's definitely one of the best spots on board the ship. And finally, my absolute favourite thing about Queen Mary II, and I think it might be yours too if you go on board the ship, is the huge amount of open deck space throughout the ship. Not only does she have a full wraparound teakwood boat deck on deck 7, but she also has these magnificent aft terraced decks that just step down from the aft end of the ship towards the swimming pool on deck 6. And this allows you to have this wonderful vista over the aft of the ship. There's bars available so you can get a drink, you can watch the ship sail in or out of port, you can go up there and inspect what it looks like to be in the middle of the Atlantic. You can see the ocean to the horizon, It's just superb. On the top deck of the ship, there is also more deck space, a little bit underutilized up there, but you will find some sporting facilities. When Queen Mary 2 first came into service, there was even a basketball court up there. I kind of wish they'd put it back because that would be a lot of fun, but you can find paddle tennis and also a golf driving range up the top. And another really special spot, actually there's two that I'll tell you about. One is just beneath the bridge, accessible in front of the Atlantic room from the twin elevators on the side of the ship. You can access this wonderful observation deck right at the top of the ship. And also far below on deck 7, just forward of the main walkway, you'll find a small door on the port and starboard side, which will lead you out to the bow of the ship, and you can stand there and look out over the bow with the Queen Mary 2's spare propeller blades as your companions. They call them the captain's cufflinks because they look a little bit like cufflinks. Fun fact, Queen Mary 2's pods actually weigh the same weight as a Boeing 747 jet, and there are 4 of them. Yep, you heard that right. It's a bit strange, but there we go. These things are just absolutely massive. They're very, very heavy. They've got massive motors inside them. So those are my 10 favorite things about Queen Mary 2. 10 reasons why I think you will love this ship, and you definitely should try it out. Queen Mary 2 is due for a mid-life refurbishment in the coming years, so it's anyone's guess what might change on board the ship once they do that big refit. Nothing's been released just yet, so hopefully she'll remain this wonderful ship that she is, but I would encourage you to give the ship a try now to see what she's like in the 21st century, a real, true, working ocean liner, the only one of her kind. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you found the video interesting, and if you did, please don't forget to give it a like. If you're interested in more content like this, feel free to subscribe because we upload lots of stuff about cruising, ocean liners, maritime history, and ship tours and reviews. Thanks once again for watching, and until next time, I hope to see you on board.